Nimona. Nimona is a story created by cartoonist Nate Diana Stevenson during his time at the Maryland Institute College of Art that follows a spunky, shape-shifting girl named, well, Nimona, and her villain boss known as Lord Ballister Blackheart, as they attempt to bring down the corrupt government organization known as the Institution of Law Enforcement and Heroics. Set in a medieval cyberpunk world where the line between hero and villain is blurred, the graphic novel explores the concepts of self-identity, blind loyalty, and the complexities of good and evil. As you probably know based on the fact that you clicked on this video, Netflix has recently released an animated film adaptation of Nimona after the idea had been thrown out by Disney because it was too gay. As someone who was a big fan of the graphic novel growing up and would go as far as to say that it is one of my favorite pieces of media of all time, I was thrilled to hear that this film had finally seen the light of day. Going into the film, I tried to keep my expectations at a reasonable level so I wouldn't disappoint myself with another failed Netflix adaptation, but after watching... goddamn. Before I get into the video though, I just wanted to mention that for this channel I plan on sticking with more video essay and narrative related content rather than the content I mentioned in my welcome video. If this channel does end up growing more in the future, then I would be open to the idea of making a second channel to explore more gaming, language learning, history, or computer science related content, as I'm still very interested in those topics as well, but that probably would be very far into the future. Right now, though, you should maybe, possibly, totally, definitely like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment on why you think Ronald McDonald was involved in the Chernobyl nuclear disaster. With that out of the way, back to the video. Also, spoiler warning for those of you who want to watch or read Nimona if you haven't already, as I highly recommend both the film and the graphic novel. But please come back to the video when you're done. To begin, I want to go over some of the changes that were made to the original story of Nimona in Netflix's film adaptation, starting with the portrayal of Ballister Blackheart's relationship with Ambrosius Goldenloin. Heh. Goldenloin? If you don't already know, Ambrosius Goldenloin is the nemesis and former lover of Lord Ballister Blackheart, or Boldheart, which I will get into in a minute, and the hero/mascot of the institution, which to an extent remains consistent in both the film and graphic novel. Originally, in the graphic novel, Ambrosius was portrayed as very arrogant and uptight. His romantic relationship with Ballister was a lot more implied than it is in the film, and their history with each other is revealed at a more gradual pace. This in turn causes their dynamic to have more focus on their rivalry during the events of the story, with their relationship taking somewhat of a backseat until the climax. In the graphic novel, the event that sparked their rivalry was a joust between Ambrosius and Ballister during their time as heroes in training at the institution. Ballister ended up winning the joust, but ultimately lost the most from the whole ordeal, as Ambrosius shot off Ballister's arm with a weaponized lance after being defeated. It was revealed towards the end of the novel that the director of the institution had given this lance to Ambrosius in order to ensure that he would win, as the institution preferred him over Ballister to become their future figurehead. Ballister, after losing his arm, was now useless to the institution and was subsequently discarded by them, causing Ballister to eventually fill the role of the villain he is seen as at the beginning of the novel. This whole background for Ballister and Ambrosius that was laid out in the novel is, in some sense, reversed in the film. Instead of a joust, a knighting ceremony for all the institution's up-and-coming heroes is used in its place. During this ceremony, each hero would walk up to a stage where they would be knighted by the queen. When it was Ballister's turn to be knighted, he did as all the rest had. When his sword was returned to him by the queen, however, it turned into a laser gun that the queen before... Sounds ridiculous. It turned into a laser gun that the queen before Ballister had time to react. Ambrosius, acting on how he was trained, pulls out his sword and quite literally disarms Ballister. Ballister, minus his right arm, or left, I can't really remember, manages to escape in the chaos that ensued after the queen's death. It's revealed later in the film that, you guessed it, the director was the one behind the Queen's death, and swapped Ballister's sword before the ceremony in order to frame him. This change in the plot puts a heavier focus on Ballister and Ambrosius' relationship throughout the film, and paints a much more sympathetic depiction of Ambrosius for the audience than how he was portrayed in the graphic novel. Though I do admit the change worked well to set up the rest of the film and allowed a queer relationship to be central to the plot, which isn't often seen because of certain companies. I personally enjoyed being able to grow on Ambrosius' character as the story progressed, as I did in the graphic novel. This isn't really a criticism of the film, though, and more of just a personal preference because of my natural bias towards the graphic novel. Ambrosius is still written very well in the film, with his character arc being more focused on how his blind loyalty to the institution conflicts with his relationship with Ballister. Something that I was not a big fan of, however, was how the film chose to put most of the dislikable qualities that Ambrosius held in the novel into a new character named Todd. By throwing all of Ambrosius' arrogance and privilege into Todd without much of anything else, he becomes very one-dimensional and feels like a caricatured bully trope from a late 80s to early 90s coming-of-age film. This might have been done to create a more digestible way for younger viewers to have a distaste for the institution, but either way, there could have been more added to his character. Todd pretty much embodies the concept of privilege in general, which is part of what Stevenson intended for Goldenloin in the graphic novel, so it could have been interesting to have a more fleshed out character arc for Todd that explores this a little further. Another somewhat major difference between the film and the graphic novel is the target demographic. The graphic novel was originally made for a more teenage and young adult audience, as Stevenson himself was in his early 20s when he started the comic, so there was more mature content and humor within the novel. The film, by contrast, is rated PG, so a lot of the more mature content was removed and most of the humor was shifted to appeal to a much younger audience. The more family-friendly and easily marketable humor that the film has doesn't align with my taste as much, probably because I'm 18 years old, but I still did end up getting a few chuckles out of it, and I appreciated all the jokes and smaller scenes that were adapted from the graphic novel. Some other more minor changes that the film made include Ballister Blackheart's name being changed to Ballister Boldheart in order to not code him as a villain right from the get-go with the new plot changes. Blackheart is just a cooler name though, so screw the plot, the movie should be catered to me specifically. Removed most of Ballister's interest/skill in science, also kinda mad about this too, and completely removed Dr. Meredith Blitzmeyer, who was, in my humble opinion, the coolest character in the graphic novel. Yes, I'm petty, I'm well aware. Now that that's out of my system, I would just like to say that, overall, most of the changes that were made in the film are done to help expand its message of acceptance. And any small details that I'm being petty about don't actually take away from the film as a whole. I'd like to take a moment really quick to just appreciate Nimona's animation and sound engineering. The visuals in the film are very reminiscent of a recent trend in animated films that was pioneered by Into the Spider-Verse, which along with Across the Spider-Verse is one of my favorite films ever, where aspects of both 2D and 3D animation are utilized to provide a very unique visual effect. This style really helps Nimona bring its fantasy sci-fi world to life with its breathtaking establishing shots and backgrounds to the very lively creatures and people that inhabit them. All of the voice actors gave amazing performances, and massive props to Chloe Grace Moritz for capturing Nimona's free and chaotic spirit. Also, I wasn't aware of this when I was watching, but Eugene from the Try Guys voices Goldenloin, and I think that's kinda cool. Also, the soundtrack is phenomenal. Like, damn. It's very fitting for Nimona to have been released at the time it did. With a new law or decision limiting the rights of disenfranchised groups coming out what feels like every other day at this point, a film about a backwards government creating barriers and fueling hatred based on monsters they made up themselves feels eerily familiar. At its core, Nimona is a story of acceptance and the power of truly being seen by someone. Nimona as a character has been misunderstood her entire life. She struggles to form relationships with others because they see her as different and get scared off by what they don't understand. When Nimona sees Ballister's wanted poster, she sees someone who's been rejected by society like she has and jumps at the opportunity to try and make a meaningful connection. He meets Ballister at his lair and eventually convinces him to let her join the quest to clear his name. Their bond starts to grow as the film progresses, and Ballister begins to question Nimona about her identity less and less and starts to actually care for her. But when faced with evidence created by a ruling class that stands to benefit from the fear of monsters they created, Ballister begins to doubt Nimona out of preconceived notions distilled upon him by the society that had rejected him. Nimona, having been through all of this before, runs away and reverts to a childlike state because of the helplessness she feels. Her emotions eat away at her until she just gives up and becomes the monster that everyone believes that she is. She heads to the center of the city and intends to end her own life by falling onto the sword of the statue of Glorith, the first friend that she had that turned their back on her. Before she can permanently end the pain that society has brought upon her, Ballister stands on the tip of Glorith's sword with his hand reaching out to stop her, finally accepting her for who she is without any fear. If you somehow haven't picked up on it yet, Nimona is very clearly an allegory for the transgender experience and, to an extent, the queer experience as a whole. As someone who's a member of the LGBTQ+ community, I relate very strongly to the feeling of people not truly understanding or knowing the whole you because of who you may choose to love or how you choose to express yourself. The graphic novel captured this feeling perfectly, and the film, I would say, does an even better job at it. The feeling of being misunderstood is a universal aspect of the human experience, and Nimona allows its viewers to feel a little less alone through its titular character. As I'm writing the script for this video, my love for Nimona only grows. If you haven't already, I really hope you have because I basically spoiled the entire plot. Please go watch Nimona. It deserves all the love in the world right now, especially with how much it took for the film to even be released. Well, anyways, thank you so much for watching all the way through the video. This is the first real video that I've posted, so please feel free to give me any tips on how I can make these videos better. Being completely honest, the script for this video alone has been the largest piece of writing that I've ever done, and I can only imagine the rest of the process for this video is going to take a while. It is. This is me currently recording the audio right now. That's very true. So it would mean the world to me if you could like this video, subscribe to the channel, and maybe even share the video with a friend. I really have enjoyed making this video, and I'm really excited for what I'm going to do on this channel in the future, so if you're interested in any future video essay / narrative analysis videos, subscribing is the best way to stay in the loop. I'm Lobster Nose, go support Nimona, and I'll see you in the next video. Don't drink and drive.